Optimus Prime. That's awesome, bro. Awesome. Can you wear it all day long? Like, does it get, do your legs get kind of a bit crazy in there, or is it good? Cool, man. Very, very cool outfit. Did you build it yourself? The whole thing?
I heard it.
Can you dance? Can you dance in that stuff? I've got my own Optimus Prime. This is like a kid's fantasy come true. Can you break something? No, I'm only kidding. Okay, can you pick up that big lighting system over there? No, just kidding. Awesome outfit, bro. Yeah, well done.
So I was actually curious about, because I read that your name means bird in Maori, and I was wondering if you feel like that's something that suits you well. Is that a name that, influenced your personality and everything?
I think it has, because I probably traveled more than maybe any other Maori, maybe more than any other Maori on the planet. And I don't mean to say that with any sort of ego attached or anything like that. I mean, just physically, I've traveled so much, mostly because of my work entails both acting and also Comic-Cons. I've been involved in Comic-Cons for maybe 10 years now. And, flown all over the world from one place to the other, and as a Maori, we were voyagers. We travelled. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of following potentially a link that the Maori were from Greek origins, ancient Greek origins. Same with you guys. Romania, we have a very ancient Greek heritage, and there's a belief that maybe once upon a time. Because in the Maori language, we have the word we have for sun. The word we have for sun is Ra. The Maori word for sun is Ra. And of course, Ra is in Egypt. And they say that back in the old days, 2 millennia before Christianity, when people worshipped the sun, they wanted to find out where the sun was coming from. And so they went east. And they kept going east, further. And they say that the Maori, or part of the Maori anyway, was part of this sailing. They kept on going further and further east, looking for the sun. And when you get to the Pacific, it becomes like a desert, an ocean the size of a desert again. Like if you go in the wrong direction, you're pretty screwed. But in terms of trying to find and go further that way, they went all the way, supposedly all the way to South America as well, So all of these roots, and the links are actually in the language, so I'm actually following up on that. I'm actually trying, because my name, Manu, for instance, is in the Indian language. In India, they have the same story as Noah's Ark, but the person who stepped off the boat that survived the Great Flood was called Manu. And so if I speak to an Indian person, they go, "Oh, your name is Manu." We know Manu. Manu was on the flood. He was the first man, And I go, that's interesting because that's my name, I think in language, if we look into our languages, we can see the roots of our history. And so, like I meet a lot of Ioana, and these names, the Ionian and stuff like that. You've got a lot of Greek heritage. Maybe we're related. Hey, cuz. Okay.
So yesterday at the Aero panel, we were talking a little bit about it, but I was actually going to ask you, how was the Aero experience different than all your other experiences, since you've had such a long and impressive career, and I was wondering if Aero was any different?
Somebody asked me that question a minute ago. They said to me, what's it like being an actor? Is it difficult? Is it, there's like a time where I was just a kid with an idea, and now I'm like an adult man who's been through maybe 25 years of being in this industry, and it's never that much different in terms of like, as an actor, you're waiting for like the audition, and then when the audition comes, you walk into a room and you're given a sheet and you read that to a casting lady, then it gets sent to a whole bunch of producers who think about it for weeks or months, and then you get a phone call that says you've got the role. And I mean, I could tell that story 20 times in my life of going through that process. You know, in the beginning I was just a bumbling kid, you know, and I'd walk into a room and they'd go like, and I'd be like, you know, they'd point the camera at me and I'd go like, you know, and I'd be scared, you know, and then I'd walk onto set if I got the role, and I'd walk up to all the people and go, oh hi, how are you? You know, and I'd be nervous and trying to fit in. But now it's like I walk into a casting agent and I go, how you doing? You know, or I get the job and I walk onto set and I'll go talk to the DOP or the lighting guy or the sound guys and get myself friendly with them, because as an actor, you do a dance with all these people. You know, you end up working with these people collaboratively to make a production. When I was a kid, I never even spoke to those people. I didn't understand them, nor did I want to understand them. But as I matured in the industry, I got to know that they're such an important part of the whole process that the best thing you can do is have a good relationship with them. So they're usually the first people that I connect with. Arrow for me was the first job that I got that was overseas. It was the first time that I actually had to fly into another country and change my place of residence and look for a gym and try to meet people, and I had to get into ice hockey, and like the Vancouver Canucks like sucked, and so everybody got depressed because the Canucks were losing, and I had to go through that depression by fault. Like, I didn't care about ice hockey, but if I went down to the local bar, everyone was like, and I'd be like, oh, okay. But you know, it was an international platform, that show, you know, and so it helped build, I mean, my ability to be an internationally known actor, for what it's worth. You know, and I mean, probably because of that show, you know, I have a very international audience, yeah. And you know, I'm proud of what I did in that show. I think we took Deathstroke from being a character that had been forgotten about in the comic book world to some degree, and we gave him some kudos, you know, and now they're starting to use, you know, Deathstroke. You know, they want to make the big movie with him, and they haven't done that yet, but I mean, you know, they've got the other guy now on Teen Titans and whatnot, and you know, I've had my time with the mask on, and I'm glad of it. You know, it was a good career opportunity for me, yeah.
So moving a little bit to Spartacus, I know that you said in an interview that you prepared physically for it, and like everything else you've done in your life, and I was wondering what that process was like for you, and if you can tell us, I know that I asked you yesterday about the Smashing Machine story.
Yeah, well, you know, Spartacus came at a time where my life was in a hole, literally. I'd 6 months before, about a year before Spartacus, I got offered a role called the Smashing Machine. It was about a sort of an MMA fighter called Mark Kerr. Does anybody know that story? Yeah, not many people do. The really crazy thing about that opportunity was I was at a gym and a friend of mine came up to me and gave me this tape or this CD, and he said, oh man, you got to watch this documentary, it's really interesting. It's about this guy called Mark Kerr. And I took it home that night from the gym and I watched it, and it was like about a guy who got really big using steroids and ended up, they called him the Smashing Machine because he literally got into a ring and smashed people. And he had a very, very interesting backstory in his life that made him kind of emotionally quite unbalanced. And his fighting was one front of who he was, and then there was the young boy from a small town trying to get out kind of character that was on the other side of his spectrum. And between the two, there was a great performance possibility, and I really saw it when I watched the documentary. But then the next day, my agent rang me and said, Manu, she's German, and she rang me and she said, Manu, we have a casting for you. It's called the Smashing Machine. And I went, Ruth, that's crazy. I just watched it last night on a DVD. A guy at the gym gave it to me to watch. And she said, Manu, that's unbelievable. Maybe it's meant to be. And I totally believed it was meant to be, because it seemed incredulous that I could get this videotape that I'd never heard of, and the next day get a call from my from my agent telling me there's a film being made of it and they want to see me. Anyway, I started this casting process, and at first they didn't even want to know about me because they wanted a big name for the role. And I started to get into the ring with MMA fighters and start making video footage that I started sending the producers, just trying to get noticed for the role. And I think it was the wife of the producer ended up watching one of these videos that I'd sent, and she told, the producer later told me that his wife was the reason that he finally decided to look at my material. And anyway, it just led to the point where they offered me the role. And so I flew to South Africa, and I trained so much physically. I was weighing 105 kilograms by the time I got to South Africa. I was giant. And who knows, do you know a guy called Fedor Emelianenko? One person, only one person, well, or two people. Right, he was one of the greatest fighters out of Russia, an incredible fighter, MMA fighter. So he was coming to do the film. And at the time I knew of him, and I thought, wow, I'm going to get in the ring with Fedor Emelianenko. And another guy called Shogun Rua, who was like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. And so it could have really been one of the greatest mixed martial arts films ever made, and I was really ready to play the role. And I got to South Africa to film it, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was meant to play my coach. And